celebration, you know, usually when Marilyn comes to speak, we tell the people, be sure and set out a lot of Kleenex. And we didn't do that. That's the only thing we missed on today. We just didn't have Kleenex out. This is definitely Kleenex time, don't worry. Your friends will use the Kleenex too. I'm married to a visionary. And she's here, and I'm very proud of her.
Thank you very much. I'm delighted to see all of you today who have come. Glenn often tells me that when I speak that there is a neon sign that flashes on my forehead and it says you can cry now. And so that's perfectly all right because I tell people if you cry then I won't. And because then I know I'm reaching you and that we're doing okay. I want to share just a little bit today of some of my background that some of you have probably already heard before, but some of you have not, and so we want to let you know just where we have come from. I share with people quite often that I have to have been there so that I can be here. And there is a process of what I have walked through to get to this point. And I want to share with you that when Nathan, our 17-year-old son, was killed by a drunk driver, that was February 10th of 1983. I was still the academic counselor at that Christian high school where Nathan attended, which was Arrowhead Christian Academy right here in Redlands. And I was trying to continue on with my job and do all the things that I was supposed to do. One of the things that I was to do was to take students to visit different colleges and universities for weekends or college days. We had one coming up, and this one was to be a time that I would have taken Nathan with me. And so this one was going to be very hard for me, and we were to go to Biola University. I kept telling the people at school that they should get someone else to do that because I didn't want to. I didn't want to be around all those teenagers with all of that teenage noise. And yet the people at school kept saying, it'll be good for you. It's sort of like oatmeal is good for you, and I don't like oatmeal either. And so I kept trying to find someone else to do it. But they kept insisting that this would help me. This was good for me. So I called Biola, and they were very aware of my situation. I said, my friend Diana Jacobs and I are going to come. Would you be willing to give us a room in one of the dormitories that's a long ways away from all those kids? Because I just don't want to hear all that noise right now. I'll drive them down, but that's all I want to do. And they agreed, they understood our situation. Diana and I drove down that day, brought 2 carloads of kids down, and I remember we got into our room and we were there just a few moments when a knock came to our door. It was some of the students that I had brought with me, and the girls were standing there, and I noticed that the tears were running down their faces, but I also noticed that they had their sleeping bags under their arms. And they all said, Mrs. Hevelin, we have questions. And I thought, you've got questions. I have questions too. And they said, we don't know who else to talk to, so we were wondering, would we be able to sleep in your room tonight? Well, obviously that wasn't my plan, but I looked at Diana and I said, well, I doubt that we're going to sleep anyway, so we might as well have them come in. I remember that they unrolled their sleeping bags on the floor, and we just were in a little circle there, and we sat up till about 3 or 4 in the morning talking about all of this situation and talking about the fact that a 17-year-old could die, and especially a Christian 17-year-old. This was just so hard for them and for me to deal with. And then finally, one of the girls said, Mrs. Hevelin, what are we going to do about Christmas? Now remember that Matthew mentioned that the twins were born on Christmas morning of 1965. Anyone who has gone through a major loss in their life will attest to the fact that, especially the first couple of years, the holidays are so difficult because you have traditions and you have the empty spot at the table and you have all of those changes that come into your life when you're used to doing it a certain way. And so I was thinking about that, oh, Christmas. But then I began to realize I don't just have Christmas. I have an 18th birthday to face, and neither one of my twins will be here to celebrate it. And that was just more than I could deal with that day. And I remember saying to those girls, I'd just like to ask God to cancel December for this year. We'll try it some other year. We all thought that was a pretty good idea, and so we talked about just going back to school and trying to ignore Christmas. The next morning, while the girls were in classes, Diana and I went into the Biola bookstore. We were both aimlessly browsing, because that's the way you are when you're in that numbness of grief. You walk and you talk and you do everything you're supposed to, you just don't remember it later. You hope that you stop at the stop sign, and you hope you remember where it is you're going when you're on the freeway. And that's the way Diana and I both were in that bookstore that day. But I remember that God seemed to lift that fog just long enough for me to see a poster that was on the wall. It had a beautiful red rose on that poster. And I looked at that and I thought, oh, that's beautiful. But then my eyes drifted down to the statement that was below that rose. And I knew that this was the message that God was sending straight from him to me. It said, God gives us memories so we might have roses in December. I thought, oh, God must have been listening last night. But then I thought, roses? You've got to be kidding. How can there be any roses in my life? 3 of my children are dead. But somehow I knew to take that poster home, and I took it, and a friend framed it, put it on my bedroom wall. Every morning I would see that poster, God gives us memories so we might have roses in December. It took me a long time to begin to understand what I feel God was trying to say to me. I'm sure every person would get a different message out of that poster. But what I got was, Marilyn, this is a winter time. It's going to take a long time for you to walk through this, but that's perfectly all right. Just trust me and take all the time you need to. But while you're walking through it, Marilyn, I want you to look around because I have some special roses for you. I have since been able to look back and realize that I have had roses of actual flowers that people have brought to me at the most amazing times. And then I've had roses in friends, those friends that said, we don't care how long it takes, we are going to stick with you. And some of them are here in the audience today, and they're still with us, and how grateful we are for those friends. But today I want to share some other roses with you that are a little newer in my experience. In 1986, we had the opportunity to move to Redlands. That was just 3 years after Nathan's death. And I can truly say that the city of Redlands has been a rose for me, because I was still very much in the throes of my grief. I was having a very hard time. And yet this town is so conducive for you to just walk around. You can look at all the old buildings. You can get enjoyment out of the history of those buildings. And then as I was walking and having that solace time for myself, I also began to get in the habit of reading memorial plaques, and they are all over this town. And I started reading some of these plaques. Many of them were in memory of a loved one who had passed on. And then one day, as I was walking, I was standing in front of the Lincoln Shrine. As I stood in front of that shrine, all of you, I'm sure, are familiar with it, those from Redlands, and it has Abraham Lincoln at the top. And that shrine was built in honor of Abraham Lincoln. But then I walked around to the side, and I saw a beautiful bronze plaque, old and dark with age. But on that plaque, it says, this building was erected by Mr. and Mrs. Robert Watchorn in memory of their only son, Emery Ewart Watchorn. I stood there and I looked at that. Now, you see, Emery died in the 1920s. The edifice of the Lincoln Shrine was built in the 1930s. The Watchorns have passed on many years ago. And yet I stood there and I thought, this gives me hope. This gives me encouragement, because I could see that out of their pain, they had given to others. And that was where I began to dream that maybe someday I could do something that would outlast me, that people would be able to look at. They would be able to read the plaques, and they would be able to see what was there. But they would see that I was giving glory to God, and that because of his faithfulness, we had been able to walk through this difficulty. And so that was where the seed started. And then the next rose that I believe I received in God's infinite timing was as I walked into this church. This church has brought more healing to me, and the pastor can attest to the fact that I have spent many hours in this empty sanctuary just sitting in one of the pews. And then I turn around and I look at the stained glass windows. And then I read the plaques, and there's one over here that says that the organ chamber area was dedicated in memory of Albert Walker Shirk, who was Mrs. Shirk's husband. And then we see over here a baptismal fount. Now this one you have to really work to see it, but I actually got flat down on my stomach one day so I could read what it said there. And it says that this is given by Mrs. Emma Bennett Elsing in memory of her two children, Dwight and Bessie Bennett. And I read that and I thought, oh, Mrs. Bennett and I would have a lot to talk about. We would have things that we could share with each other. And you see that baptismal fount, once again, is something that can give me hope. God's faithfulness, that she was still here, she came to this church, and she gave that baptismal fount to the glory of God. And then one of the most special roses that came into my life happened 2 years ago on Easter Sunday. I was standing with Dr. Linden, and we were out in the patio area where the statue is now, and you will see it in just a few minutes. And I remember talking to him, and in the spot where the statue is now, there was just some scruffy-looking old shrubs there. Every other place in the patio, there are beautiful memorial roses, there are memorial trees, but nothing seemed to want to grow there. And I said to Dr. Linden, I said, see that spot? If I could ever figure out how to do it, I would love to be able to put a statue there, and then you wouldn't have to worry about it growing. We could just plant the statue there. Well, now, Dr. Linden liked that idea, and he said, oh, that sounds like a great idea. I said, but I don't even know where to start. Who does a statue? I don't know how to get anyone to do a statue. He said, well, she's right over here. You start with the best. You start with Linda Pugh. Well, now, I knew Linda Pugh as someone who sat over here in the choir loft, and for those who don't know, Linda is the one lady who sings bass, and I think if I sat up there, I could sing bass with her. And but Linda sat in the choir. I knew her, but I did not know that she did the Smiley Brothers statue. And Dr. Linden told me that she's the one that did that statue. And now he's definitely a man of action, and so he said, there she is, right over there, let's go talk to her. And we did, Easter Sunday 2 years ago. And I started to talk to Linda. All I had was a dream, pictures in my mind. I have no idea how you take those pictures in someone else's mind and you manage to put them on paper, and then you manage to put them in bronze. But somehow Linda was able to do that. And she was able to bring to life the dream that I had. Now the plaques on the back of your bulletin, you see the reading of the plaques. The plaque that is on the front says, to the glory of God. And that is the most important statement there. To the glory of God, and in honor of all children, especially those who left too soon. Now, there are many of us in this audience who know who the children are who have left too soon. I see many around here that I have met through my time of counseling bereaved parents. But in honor of all children, you see, that's every single one of us in this room, because we are God's creation, and we are His children, and He loves us. When you see that statue, I want you to look at the way Christ is looking at that little boy. The unconditional love. The way He is accepting him. And that is the way Christ would receive each one of us, with that unconditional love, because we are His created being and we are His children. And so today, as you look at that, I want you first to remember the verse from Isaiah 26:3 that says, thou wilt keep him in perfect peace, whose mind is stayed on thee. That means in the time of the child's death. That means in the loss of a loved one. That means in any kind of trauma that we're going through, He will keep us in perfect peace if we keep our mind and our eyes focused on Him. As we do that, then as you look at that statue, I want you to remember, He loves you, He loves you, He loves you. Thank you very much.